Hello, I'm Ngamisile Pamela Ngubane, and this is the Entity Dynamics podcast. Entity Dynamics is a culture development consultancy where we believe that culture creates behavior and behavior creates reality. So the title of this video is Christianity is not an Abrahamic religion. So obviously this is probably controversial to some people, but it's only natural, I suppose, that it would be controversial because, as we all know, religious institutions in this world that we live in have created a situation where they've given themselves, through various means, a veneer of infallibility. And if anyone questions their origins or their foundations, then that person must be some sort of a heretic or just some sort of a deviant of some sort. Okay, but anyway, I believe this topic is important because we've been led to believe that Christianity is an Abrahamic religion. And the reason why I say it's not an Abrahamic religion is, first of all, scripturally, there is evidence to strongly suggest that. And secondly, the Abrahamization of Christianity, or let me say the path that Christ came to teach, okay? The Abrahamization of that path in what is known as Christianity today, the vast majority of the Christian world, has allowed empire and conquest to become synonymous with Christianity. All right. So, first of all, Christ himself gave evidence that the path he was teaching is not an Abrahamic one. He said, for example, before Abraham was, I am. Okay, and then the Pharisees wanted to stone him for that. So what was he saying? He was saying that he is before Abraham. Okay, and then in the book of Hebrews, it talks about how Christ is a priest in the order of Melchizedek. Doesn't say he's a Levite. Doesn't say he's in the order of Aaron, who was the father of the Levites. In the order of Melchizedek. And who was King Melchizedek? He was the king of Salem when Abraham was coming into Canaan. And so Salem was basically the original Jerusalem. King Melchizedek gave Abraham wine and bread, just like Christ gave his disciples wine and bread, and he blessed him before he went and, continued his mission. So, if Christ is a priest in the order of Melchizedek, then it means he supersedes Abraham again. Because Abraham, after he came back from his battle, he gave a tenth of what he had gotten to Melchizedek, right? Like a tithe. Melchizedek was the priest of Abraham. Okay, so Christ is not Abrahamic. He's not following the Abrahamic line. He preceded Abraham. Okay. And then, so why is it a problem that the path that Christ teaches has been Abrahamized? It's because Abraham was a conqueror. Okay, he was a conqueror and he conquered land and, he basically created a kingdom for himself in this world. And Christ says his kingdom is not of this world. Even his followers thought that he had not been the Messiah because he didn't conquer Jerusalem, Judea, Israel, Samaria from the Romans. They were expecting the Messiah to be a conqueror, right? He said, my kingdom is not of this world. And in the book of Hebrews, it explains what that means, and this is also why the Jewish rabbis today reject Christ, because they say the Messiah was supposed to conquer and establish an earthly kingdom. Okay, so the path that Christ taught was not a path about building an empire or a kingdom on this planet. It was about the kingdom of God being inside you, and then you being an anchor of heaven on earth. And through your actions and through everything that you do on a day-to-day basis, bring heaven down to earth. purify your existence, sanctify yourself through following his path, and radiate a frequency in your world that is heavenly and which also inspires other people to follow that path that you're on, so that they too can participate in bringing heaven down to earth. That's what he meant when he said to his disciples, they must go out and make disciples of every nation and tongue. And the Bible also says that for Christ so loved the world. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. The world, not the Abrahamic people. Okay, because if he was Abrahamic, his mission would have been Abrahamic. It wasn't. It was global. It was humanity's salvation, not just of the people who descended from Abraham. Okay, so why has the path of Christ been Abrahamized? So that it can become something which can be a vehicle for empire and conquest. Okay, so like I said, Abraham was a conqueror, and then you have Emperor Constantine seeing a symbol of the cross in a dream, telling him that through that symbol he would conquer. Christ never told anyone to take the cross and use it as a symbol of conquest. In fact, if you look at the history of the symbol of the cross, it wasn't even the symbol of Christianity until the time of Constantine, really. And this is a fact which a lot of people don't want to talk about. But the symbol of the cross before was the fish, okay? Because Christ said to Peter and James and John, I will make you fishers of men. This is the symbol of discipleship, of making disciples to Christ. That's the symbol, the fish. And that's the mission that Christ gave to his disciples, not to conquer people and nations, not to take over land in the name of Christ, like the Vatican has done all over the world. Okay. So the Abrahamization of Christianity also allows it to become a tool for political activity in the service of empire. And you see this when, for example, a lot of missionaries were forced to push the agenda of empire wherever they went in the world. There's evidence that shows that a lot of missionaries were not interested in spreading empire, but the empire said to them, if you want our support and our protection, you're going to teach the natives that they have to become Western in order to become Christian. You see? So suddenly being a follower of Christ also meant speaking whatever European language that those missionaries came with, means dressing in a particular way, because apparently the way you dress is such an abomination to God. That's called mental colonization. Okay, so this is the Abrahamization of Christianity so that it can facilitate conquest in the most absolute way. Okay, because it's one thing to conquer people's land and their bodies, but it's another thing to conquer their minds, and even more profound, to conquer their concept of their creator. Because like I said in a previous video, you become what you worship. And if you believe that God is racist and tribalist and culturalist, then you also will accept a worldview, a culture, a global economic system, which favors certain people over others, which is exclusionary, which is enslaving, because Abraham had slaves, Christ didn't have slaves. He said he came to set the captives free. And most importantly, mental and spiritual captivity. This is why he argued with the Pharisees. That's why he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. In other words, humans are not beholden to religious rules and regulations. Those rules and regulations are there to serve people. But in the Abrahamic sense, and I'm not saying Abraham did this, but the Pharisees adulterated it. The rules and regulations became the bondage of the people. Bye.